Well, Beverley, it's an extraordinarily difficult trip. There are 6 different conflicts going on around this region right at the moment. There's obviously the war in Gaza. There's the growing problems in the West Bank here, where there's been hundreds of people. Palestinians have been killed by Israeli soldiers and Israeli settlers. There's the problems on the north of Israel, the border with Lebanon and Hezbollah. There's the bombings, of course, the US has done in Syria and Iraq. And there's the Houthis firing at the ships in the Red Sea. It's been a long time since there's been so many different conflicts going on around the Middle East. And so Antony Blinken comes here with a couple of aims. The US has said, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, the number one priority is to get those 130 hostages still in Gaza out. And that would be a deal for a 2-month ceasefire with Hamas. That's currently being considered by Hamas. We're expecting there could be an announcement on that within the next 24 hours. But he's also trying to look at how to try to stabilise some of these different problems going on around the region.
Yeah, and let's just stay on that ceasefire and release of hostages. I mean, could the US's role, particularly these counterattacks, jeopardise that being pulled off, or is it happening very much in isolation?
Bev, I think it's happening separately. I think it's been quarantined. Hamas wants that ceasefire. They want that 2-month ceasefire. The deal that's been offered to Hamas, it's been brokered by Qatar, Egypt, with Israel and Israeli contributions, would be that the hostages would be released in 3 tranches. First of all, the civilian hostages. Secondly, the soldiers, Israeli soldiers who are currently hostages. And finally, tragically, the bodies of some of those hostages who did not survive. Hamas wants that 2 months of ceasefire. They're hoping it could go longer and it could become a permanent ceasefire. So whatever else is happening around this region at the moment, and there is a lot happening, Hamas wants this to happen, as does Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu if he can announce that all 136 hostages or their remains are coming out, that's a massive political boost to him.
It is a boost to him potentially, but it is also a risk if Hamas agrees to all of the release of all the hostages and all, as you've just laid out. It could also mean then Israel digs in for a long-term offensive that it will have its own timetable on.
Well, the United States is probably the strongest party now, trying to say to Israel, this war has to come to an end. It's now got political ramifications, obviously, in the US with Joe Biden. In key states like Michigan, the Arab-American vote is larger than the margin by which the Democrats hold Michigan, for example. And so Joe Biden is definitely putting pressure now on the Israelis to try to bring this war to an end. So now there's the imperative inside Israel, the far right of Benjamin Netanyahu's own coalition, people like Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich, who are the ones who are resisting any deal with Hamas and any end to the war. So now for Benjamin Netanyahu, it's an internal political battle.
Yeah. Let's come back to the US and their counterattacks. They say this is only the beginning. What is your sense of how Iran is going to react or continue to direct these Iran-backed proxies?
Well, Iran's major proxy, of course, their strongest weapon is Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon. And at the moment, there is no appetite by Iran or Hezbollah or the Lebanese people for Hezbollah to get involved in a war with Israel. Lebanon economically has been devastated in recent years. The dreadful explosion, there's been COVID, there's been so many of the refugees coming in from Syria. They're in bad economic shape. They don't want a war with Israel. And so there's a pressure now that Hezbollah not be activated by Iran. And Iran doesn't want a direct confrontation with the United States. And so the key question is, a lot of those militia groups who are now hidden along the Euphrates River valley there, along between Syria and Iraq, they are the ones now who are going a bit rogue. They are the groups who hit the US facility in Jordan last week and killed those 3 soldiers. So the key question is, does Iran try to improve support for them and activate them? Or does Iran say, this is not working for us at the moment, this is not the time to pull on an escalation? We still don't really know the answer to that question.
Yeah. And all of this, John, as that humanitarian crisis in Gaza is still just unspeakable to a degree. And, you know, there have been question marks raised over UNRWA, but the funding to that pretty much only now aid agency for the Gazans is quickly drying up.
That's right. It's now desperate, Bev, in Gaza. There are now, according to UNICEF, 19,000 orphaned children in Gaza. And we're getting reports of the terrible tragedy of children burying other children, burying their siblings, because of those 19,000 orphans, when their brothers or sisters are killed, they as children are the ones having to bury their siblings. So the funding to UNRWA, I think it's a legitimate question. Has Penny Wong, for example, or Anthony Albanese seen the information, the intelligence upon which Israel is basing its claims? They are claiming Israel that perhaps up to 10 or 12 members of UNRWA facilitated in that October 7 attacks. I don't think the US has seen the evidence. I think it would be good for the Foreign Minister of Australia to say to the Israelis, can we have a look at your evidence against these 12 people? I don't understand how Australia can withdraw funding, or any country, without having seen that evidence, and I don't think Australia has seen the evidence. But of course the victims of this, whatever the politics, are those women and children, the desperate 1.8 million people in Gaza who have no homes anymore, who are having operations without anaesthetics, who haven't drunk fresh water for weeks. And so whatever happens with the 10 or the 12 UNRWA people, it's the funding, it's that humanitarian crisis to which you refer.
Yeah. John, always good to speak. Thank you very much.